praise that.
Out there? Can everybody hear me? Hello, everyone.
Hello.
Thank you, Joe, for inviting me to be a part of this. One day when I discovered Joan was a poet, I sort of gleefully shared my sister's published poems with her, and I could tell immediately she sort of got the flavor of those poems, and so we have enjoyed conversations and sharing about that ever since, and I was very pleased to be a part of this poetry reading. I will be sharing some of my sister's poems this afternoon. Just by way of a little background, I grew up in Baraboo, Wisconsin, which is, as you probably know, maybe 45 minutes north of Madison. And we were a family of writers, and all of us were fairly obsessed with words. And my sister was, if not maybe the most obsessed, definitely was one of the writers in our family. She had her doctorate in rhetoric, if you can imagine. A doctorate in rhetoric. So words were her life in a way. And then she was not a particularly bookish person. She had a freeness about her and a spirit and a philosophical approach to life. But she was the one who published creative writing and poetry of our family members. And her poetry, you will see, is filled with sort of an energy about everyday life and the details of the everyday and the details of our place in the world and where we are. She had a sense of play and humor and a creative energy that sort of flowed from her. She was my older sister, so I was blessed through my childhood to have an older sister with that kind of spirit, who I don't remember ever wondering, well, what should we do today? There were always ideas and things to do. Eleanor died in 1994. She was 58 years old, and she wrote poetry throughout her adult life, but it wasn't until after she died, and this book was put together, all her poems, and I read the book in its entirety. It was then that I began to fully appreciate her gift and wished that I had been more attentive to it along the way before she died. The first poem is titled Telephone Poles, and it reflects her life in Baraboo. She refers to her in the poem to the country world that we lived in. And the telephone poles were part of our everyday life and were part of our lives in various ways, which she talks about in the poem right about. So telephone poles. Come spring, a warning sweeps the suburbs. Call before you dig a hole for your new shrub. You may get a shock through your shovel as it strikes our underground cable. Thank you, bell telephone. Once telephone poles ice creaked in the cold as I walked into winter's stiff white beauty. Farm town, Wisconsin. Sun prism through glazed wires hurt my eyes. Mid-morning thaw and crystal husks pocked the snow. The wires sang. Summer's telephone poles were inch marks on ruler roads, measuring the hills, were backrests after bike rides, staffs for the trumpet vine, weathered gray against its orange. A rotten pole dug up left one cut vine weeping sap for days. Mainstays of the way things looked in that country world, jeweled with green blue insulators, their wires flung in rows forever. Hugging their gray girths, my ear to their splintery hides, I could feel sound and the messages they carried. But their own communing, August warm, like grasshoppers' legs on long grass blades, like milkweed pods rasping silk. With my sister, my big sister, our days were filled with creative energy, ideas for ways to occupy our time. One of the things, for instance, we did was we made paper dolls. They were all women, young women. They all had names, and they all had careers. We listened on Sunday afternoons, we'd sit in the kitchen and paint and draw. And we would listen to The Shadow on the radio. Yep. And Nick Carter. We had a dollhouse. And the dollhouse was stored in the basement most of the, well, not most of the time, but from time to time. But then once in a while we'd bring it up and we would occupy ourselves with the dollhouse. Eleanor's next poem is titled Dollhouse, and it reflects a child's imagination about living in the dollhouse. How I long to live there, cozy under a quarter-watt bulb, balanced on a toothpick-legged chair. I nibbled crumbless plaster sandwiches served on tiny, tinkling tea things. I nibbled crumbless plaster sandwiches served on tiny, tinkling tea things, kept in a 6-inch cupboard with pinhead pulls. A brindled china dog for company. Frying pans clean on stenciled burners. Bathroom fixtures that know no waste. The clock hands constant at 8:10. Prone upon a painted sofa, beside a phone that never rings. I wouldn't move. In Eleanor's adulthood, she lived with her own family in Chicago and Evanston. And her poems began to reflect that new environment, no longer the pristine country world of Baraboo, Wisconsin, but in the big city where things were vastly different. Danger could be anywhere, including when riding the elevated train in downtown Chicago. Strategies had to be devised to keep oneself safe in everyday life. Strategies such as incantation, which is the title of this next poem. This elevated train is all right. It will never crash with such a gray-haired couple, safe in hats, riding to the walnut room for lunch. Will not tip on its rimmed wheels, tearing out its fingernails as it falls to smash on Wilson Avenue. The sway at corners is centrifugal. The clap below is not a rupture. No compacted, melded compartments will have to be torched apart with such a toddler, name of Kenji, solid in his blue snowsuit. There will be no passengers dangling, stockings ringing down their legs with such a tired grandma beside me, reading once is not enough. No mallows mashed on metal sideways, teeth rattling out the buckled doors, as long as that bald man keeps one hand on that brown briefcase. The focus of the next poem is on the hardiness of small flowers that somehow will themselves to survive among the bricks and mortars of the hardscape of the big city. The title is Sticklers. When the sidewalk meets the brick and marble sink factory, a yellow gold flower. I remember its country name, Butter and Eggs. Fit company for those tall, leather-leaved, white-headed things that take over vacant lots, and tufts of grass forever nudging between the patio stones. I think of the wind-frazzled mountain pine lodged stubborn in its crack of dirt, of pollen, spores, and airborne seeds with claws and hooks and fluff to grasp whatever travels. All space is taken, and yet again the pods prepare to fill. Now, a bit of fun. Eleanor gently, and not so gently, poking fun at herself. This is a takeoff on a familiar fairy tale, that you may be able to guess what that's going to be, because the title of the poem is Trying On. Foot exercising ever since I hear he's searching the land, until one sunny Monday at 2 o'clock, the purple-plumed prince arrives. Mother serves scones, while quietly I wash my feet under the kitchen faucet. Should I have polished my toenails? Too late now. I enter the living room, demure. He looks at my face, not my feet. No pleasure from the many-buttoned footman either, as he produces the slipper atop a fat red pillow. My foot, willed small, slips in. Squeezed toes reproach me through the glass. Mother shouts for joy as I make it to my feet. Nudges from prince to footman. It fits, I insist. It won't do, he says. You don't look anything like her. One of his fancy dress horses kicks in our fence just before the royal carriage pulls away. Moving beyond the windy city and the fun, crossing the Atlantic to visit Canterbury. Still a keen observer of the everyday details of the space around her, even in the grandeur of that cathedral. Eleanor includes thoughts about the workers who built that edifice, and what did building that mean to them. Canterbury Cathedral to Geoffrey Chaucer. The same watching crowd of carved saints, stern looks eroded and sooty. The same assault of light and color through stained glass on sinners wearing sunglasses. They build and we restore. Yet there's not a grain's wearing in the time it takes to see two bishops on stone pillows crick their necks toward the altar and point their hands to heaven. Not a shift in the dust as we view the effigy of Joan, Earl of Modron's wife, died 1404. Her face, worn to a bottom of stone from pilgrims touching, and wonder who it was who climbed to gild the topmost boss of rose and gold. And was it holy praise, or just a job? How many paradoxes to hold at once, so large on earth, so small under heaven. Canterbury. We are Jonahs inside these swale ribs of stone. In their height we duck our heads. Still afraid, we leaf through guidebooks. And Elmer's last poem, Naming the Colors, which is used as the title for the book. It's a whimsy of naming things, which she seemed to enjoy writing about. She follows the job of a fellow in a paint factory, whose job it is to name the colors of the paint. Someone I knew took a job in a paint factory naming the colors. He started with nature because color begins there, and added giraffe beige, sumac russet, bean sprout white, while speculating about cutworm green and Weimaraner taupe. Meanwhile, a watercolorist informed him that painting was wholly a matter of getting the colors right. An exact shade of gray indigo across snow, and, behold, a shadow. A twig, red-brown where sunlight hits, black-brown where it doesn't. But the watercolorist forgot. Monet had proved colors hard to pin down when the light's always fooling around, and you end up with haystack pink. In the paint factory, at least, colors stay put, though there are difficulties. Skin. He learned better than to call any color flesh or nude, and never located a color fit for either name. Caravaggio had it, but died before he named it. Next, the color namer turned to artists. He knew about Gainsborough blue, and soon there was Francis Bacon crimson, and Tanguy ghost peach. On the third color run, he rested. Then came manufactured colors, taking off as fire engine red and gunmetal gray. He formulated manila and envelope gold, postal worker blue, naugahyde tan, samsonite pink, fiesta orange, wheat checks brown, and he was well pleased. There were naturally certain juxtapositions. Orange, both color and fruit. Pink, both color and flower. Blue, both color and mood. And sad colors with cheerful names, like periwinkle. Also colors too sorrowful or embarrassing to name. Graveyard rose, dead fern green, menstrual maroon. All the browns on the ground. He learned to appreciate the elusive contrariness of color, constantly coming up new and just out of reach. Of course, it was all metaphor. He'd get angry as a poet if someone failed to understand implications and hue of flooding yellow and quotidian violet. Last I heard, he tried to envision the colors butterflies see, and gone beyond the spectrum, conjuring theory. Want to go on with the other? That's the end of Eleanor's poetry. But Joan asked us to find a couple others that we particularly were drawn to that were written by other authors. So I just got two. Okay. This is a poem by Sarah Freely, who actually is the sister of a good friend of our daughter's. And she's quite a published poet. I pulled her up on the web, and this was the only one I was familiar with, but I think she's well known in some circles. This is a poem which draws from the title of the poem is Wondrous, and it draws from the wondrous story of Charlotte's Web, which was written in the 1950s, so it sort of predated my early childhood, and maybe predated most of us in the room. But I know of Charlotte's Web, and it is a story of friendship and love between an 8-year-old girl, Fern, who lived on a farm, and Wilbur, the pig, on the farm, and Charlotte, the spider. It's a story of the life and death on the farm. So it has happiness and sorrow. So this poem refers to that story. Wondrous. I'm driving home from school when the radio talk turns to Evie White, his birthday, and I exit the here and now of the freeway at rush hour. Travel back into the past where my mother is reading to my sister and me the part about Charlotte laying her eggs and dying. And though this is the 5th time Charlotte has died, my mother is crying again. And we're laughing at her because we know nothing of loss and its sad math. How every subtraction is exponential. How each grief multiplies the one preceding it. How the author tried 17 times to record the words, "She died alone," without crying. 17 takes, and a short walk during which he called himself ridiculous. A grown man crying for a spider he'd spun out of the silk thread invention. Wondrous how those words would come back and make him cry. And yes, wondrous to hear my mother's voice 10 years after the day she died. The catch, the rasp, the gathering up before she would say to us, "I'm okay." All right, one last poem. To end a very whimsical note. Some of you must be familiar with this poem. The author is Rose Milligan, and Joan introduced me to this. And the title is Dust If You Must. Dust If You Must. Now what could be louder? What? Oh, louder? Okay. Well, if you can't hear me, do something. Raise your hand. Can you hear me over here? Okay. Sorry about that. All right, dust if you must. Dust if you must. But wouldn't it be better to paint a picture or write a letter, bake a cake or plant a seed? Ponder the difference between want and need. Dust if you must, but there's not much time with rivers to swim and mountains to climb, music to hear and books to read, friends to cherish and life to lead. Dust if you must, but the world's out there with the sun in your eyes, the wind in your hair, a flutter of snow, a shower of rain. This day will not come round again. Dust if you must, but bear in mind old age will come, and is not always kind. And when you go, and go you must, you yourself will make more dust.